Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm going to go ahead and pop this up to make sure. Looks like we are. So everything's good to go. I have a little bit different format. We're trying to shove in some more topics today. I'll introduce our guest. So Jeff's out once again. He said he's going to be... Whoops, hold on. Got a little bit of an echo again. I did the same exact thing last week. Screwed it up. But Jeff is going to be rolling out Spaces or Laces this week, I'm pretty sure. That's what he told us. So you're going to be getting extra content if you're subscribed to the iTunes feed, or if you're on YouTube, you can check that out. I don't think he's going to actually be doing it live because he's still working second shift, so it would go live during the day. But I'll be posting that on Twitter if he does go live. So it's me, Richie Leahy, as always, Matty B, and we have our guest, Rick David here. He is our baseball guru, the same guy that I bitched about, like, when was that, 2 weeks ago, about the baseball rules whenever my guys didn't hit enough pitching innings. And
that was 2 weeks ago, yeah.
Yep. So He's on the show, trying to expand. We're getting a couple guests on. And basically, he's the guy that I know that knows the most about baseball. So we're going to start off talking about baseball. Pirates are on a hot streak. It's continuing. They swept the Brewers last week. They did lose 2 out of 3 to the Rockies, but I think that's the West Coast thing. You're going west. You're always going to lose a few games. They blew out the Giants last night. They play them again tonight, so hopefully by the time this is over, you can catch that game. They'll get another win if they sweep them. And then they have one against
San Diego.
Yeah, San Diego, the Padres. So I think that they have a good chance of coming into August right in the thick of things in the NL Central. I was wrong on Starling Marte. I actually picked him up in fantasy. After last week, after railing on him on the show, Matt kind of talked me into him. I went home. I'm like, there's no way he's available because we're in a league with a bunch of Pirate lovers. I thought for sure someone was sitting on him all year. Nope. I picked it up. I thought it was a joke. I had to text to find out if I got him or not. And he's been on fire. The one game, I think he scored 4 runs last week. He had another run last night. So, good pickup. If he's available, he might be. Just because people don't pay attention to that kind of thing. So, Rick, go ahead. What do you think the Pirates' chances are of winning the NL Central?
I would say slim. You still are in the same division as the Cubs. And you know, there's 2 things I said this last week, and I'll say it again. There's 2 things I know for sure that's happening in the NL Central. The Cubs are not done dealing yet, and the Reds are not done dealing yet. So you're going to have the Reds completely fall apart and probably take 5th place in the division. Zach Cozart will not be there August 1 when they face the Pirates. So the Pirates are going to face another team that's on a slide coming to them. So, and the Cubs aren't done dealing. They need a bullpen help. They need a bench bat still. They're going to need some help. So it's a team that's looking to get better and needs to get better is the Cubs. And the nice thing is they'll have Kyle Hendricks here probably in a week or 2, if not this week even. They'll come back and pitch for them. So their pitching is going to get a lot better, and they already have the best rotation in the NL Central, no question about it. And you have also the Milwaukee Brewers about 4 hours ago picked up Anthony Swarzak from the White Sox. So a pitcher that had a 2.220, 230 ERA coming into today. So they needed that right-handed arm in that bullpen. And you knew the Brewers were not going to make a big deal because they have so many minor league prospects. They're not dealing. They dealt Ryan Cordell, who is at best the 5th outfielder on a team, the 25th guy. So, I mean, I will say this. Do the Pirates have a chance? Yes. But is it a slim chance? Yes. Especially when 2 of your wild card spots are probably going to go to somehow out of the 3 teams in the West. So between the Diamondbacks, Rockies, and the Dodgers are somehow going to take – somebody's going to take the division. The other 2 are going to go to the wild card. The AL East is a mess completely. You have a bunch of teams that are dealing already out in that division and probably will continue to deal here. So I would say slim. I mean, the pitching fell apart early in the year, came back a little bit, but what are you going to deal? They already said Meadows is untouchable. And if you want to get the big guy, Meadows is going to be demanded in every trade. So And you got Marte, who's now owned in about 80% of Yahoo Fantasy League, so 4 out of every 5. So in somebody's leagues, he's still available. But the Pirates are going to get lucky here for this week. San Diego's already dealt 3 arms away and probably will deal at least one more. Brad Hand's probably going to be gone here during that series. Then you go back to the Reds, come in here to home to the Pirates during last week. And then for the weekend, they play San Diego again. So you're going to play some bummer teams that are going to be easy to beat up on. But when they have to play the division, that's where they always have problems. So I'll turn it back over to you guys, but that's my thought. So I would say slim, but I think it's going to look good now. Yinzer Nation's going to be proud because they're going to be winning. But when you're beating the Giants, the Padres, and the Reds, really, come on. I mean, there are 3 of the worst teams in the National League right there.
Well, the Pirates did win a series against the Cubs recently. They beat the Cubs, the Brewers, and the Cardinals all within a span of 2 weeks.
I'll agree with you.
I think they're just creating that false sense of security. They have that push right now where they're winning a lot of games, but I don't know if they have it in them to maintain that streak and that consistency. They're playing well now, but typically as it gets closer to playoff time, usually they start to stumble and lose a lot of that momentum that they get. They're riding the high, but I'm just not buying it right now. I don't know if they have the long-term availability to do that. The thing that I'm really curious to see within the NL Central, though, is who's going to make the big move. I know one of the things I saw was the Stanton is being floated around to being traded all over the place. I don't know who in their right mind would want to trade for him right now with his $320 million contract. I think there isn't a team in the NL Central that would be crazy enough to buy that contract up. I just don't see it happening. I think it's just going to boil down to I think it's just going to come down to who's hot at the end of the season is going to end up being the team that's going to take the NL Central.
Yeah, I agree. I did see that the Brewers were actually, if you are in the gambling, they only were projected in Vegas to have 70 wins. So everyone is expecting them to kind of collapse. Matt actually sent out, and I'm going to be going ahead and sending this out as a link on Twitter, but he found an article that broke down the actual strength of each bullpen, kind of using some statistics where it was the average mean instead of just looking at pure numbers. And the Pirates actually were surprisingly middle of the pack, along with most of the NL Central teams. There's not real one standout bullpen that's going to go ahead and help them down the stretch. So last week, Rick, I mentioned you said about having 2 wild cards from the NL West. Do you think there's a chance that those teams are going to beat each other up these last 2 months whenever the schedules are interdivision heavy?
I would say that's definitely something you could see, especially since there's 3 of them right there. But one thing that they do have an advantage of right now, the 2nd worst and 4th worst teams are also in that division in the National League, so San Diego and San Francisco. But yeah, I can see it. But as of today, right now, Milwaukee is 5 games out. And so I would say, yes, you could see them definitely beating each other up. It depends who is going to who's going to get the key guys. I mean, right now I'm constantly hearing the rumor that Verlander's on the market, and Verlander and the Cubs want Verlander. So there could be another name. And I think the Milwaukee realized that was their weak spot was the bullpen. And I think that's why they went out and got Swarzak today. So, but yeah, I could see a lot of them beating each other up there. And I just want to say it's going to be tough for somebody to. It's 5 games now. Right now, you have St. Louis beating the Rockies right now 2-0. So in the 5th inning, so bottom of 5. So these 7-0. And Milwaukee's winning currently right now too. So some of those teams are starting to win in the Central already, taking wins away from teams in the West.
Yeah, and I expected that to happen. And I don't know, for the Pirates, it just seems like they need to hold course, stay on course or whatever. My big thing, my worry all year has been if they're going to trade McCutchen. Last week, before they swept the Brewers, I had a really bad feeling that they were going to. I've been talking to some people inside the organization, and it looks like he's off the market. That's what I've been hearing. I don't know how good my sources are, considering we just started this. But we have gotten some free swag out of it, so I'm hoping that they are connected a little bit. But I'm hearing that he's off the market, and that if the Pirates make a move, they're looking to bolster pitching instead, and they're not going to try to trade him or Harrison, who was the other one that I think was brought up as being on the market. So that winning streak last week really helped pay dividends. So do you guys have any closing thoughts on this before we move on to the NFL?
I just hope that the Cardinals are able to bolster that bullpen, because with the link I sent you, it came from the statistics showing how lousy they are. Saying about them being up 2-0 right now, that's the kind of games that usually the 8th or 9th inning, when they turn it over to the bullpen, they end up choking and giving those games away. So hopefully they can finish that out strong, or if they don't have guys to get done, can bolster that before the trade deadline.
Yeah, and I see that being one area where the Cardinals are going to add. They just got back Zach Duke off an injury from Tommy John surgery, but yesterday he got lit up for a 2-run home run. So is that a good quality bring back or not? So it's somebody they already got on the roster, but who knows if it's going to help in the long term.
All right, cool. Well, we'll be checking back in on that next week, as there's only about 2 months left in the season pretty much. But we're going to kick it off with the NFL. Moving on to the Steelers, they actually start training camp this Thursday, I believe.
Correct.
So we'll be getting into some football content. I've been hanging out waiting for that. We're going to try to play a clip here. I don't think you guys are going to be able to hear it, Rick and Matt, but it will be played for the audience. Now, I did send it to you guys earlier. It is from, just give me a second here, Coach Keith Butler. So go ahead and play that. So, guys, I'll let you know when this is over.
That they need to contribute. I probably said everybody looks good in shorts, and I'll say the same thing about these guys. Everybody looks good in shorts, and they look good in shorts right now. There's some hope there. The hope is that they're picking it up. Fairly smart guys are picking the defense up, and we'll see what they can do when we get pads on and we start playing NFL ball.
All right, so hopefully that played, because it's a little test. We have access to some of the coaches' interviews and stuff for the Pittsburgh Steelers, so we'll be playing them on the show. Just a little test before training camp starts. Basically, Keith's saying everyone looked good over basically summer OTAs, but they're in shorts. So he's optimistic, but everyone always looks good in shorts coming from college, because until you get the pads on, you don't really know what you have. But he's optimistic. I've been hearing a lot of good things about TJ Watt. I don't know if he's going to be overhyped because of his brother, but that's a guy to keep an eye on. Also, the receiver out of USC. He has
Juju Williams.
Yeah. A lot of good things on him. The Steelers are basically stacked at wide receiver, so something's going to have to happen. I know they got him as an insurance policy, but I'm optimistic on the Steelers this year. And I'm actually just going to go right into this. USA Today put out their predictions today. So we're going to switch this. Hopefully audio and everything stays on. They have the Steelers going 12-2 and winning the AFC North. So, guys, just based off that, what do you think? We'll start off with you, Matt. What do you think the Steelers' chances are of winning the AFC North?
I think their chances of winning the North are pretty good. For years, it's gone down to either them or Baltimore, with the occasional Cincinnati Bengals coming in. The one thing that they've been relatively consistent with has been the offense. Transitioning from Arians to Haley, they were still both predominantly pass-based, with letting Ben audible a lot at the line. I think as long as they leave the offense in Ben's hands and give him the autonomy to make changes at the line, I think you're going to see the same consistent offense that they have. Defensively, they've invested a lot of money in other players and getting younger and trying to get over the hump of some of those past players that were starting to age out from the Cowher, early Tomlin era. So I definitely think that they're in a position right now to make a move. The one team that I think may surprise some people this year is going to be Cleveland. I know that USA Today pick had them at 4-12. I think that they may be a surprise team. They had a lot of injuries last year, and Coach Hugh Jackson does an excellent job with the talent around him. But I think if he can get some consistent quarterback play, they may be a surprise team coming into this season.
Rick, what do you think about the Steelers this year?
I could see why they had that prediction so highly for the Steelers having the 12 wins, because some of the teams they're playing, I'm looking at the schedule, their away games are obviously Cleveland, Chicago, Baltimore, the Kansas City Chiefs, Lions, Colts, and Bengals and Texans. So not some of the hardest teams in the league, in places that still travel well for the Steelers as well. I mean, there are some games that do look like they're going to be tough. Patriots are going to be at home this year. Titans are going to be home this year, especially with a lot of former Steeler coaches on that coaching staff still. But you got some easier teams, and I think this is an easier schedule for the Steelers than they've had past schedules. So I could see the 12-win prediction. Bengals are kind of more on a slide. Ravens, you don't know. And I agree with Matt. The Cleveland Browns are a younger team that's getting better. They just need some spots where they need a top-notch star or a draft pick or something to pan out. They still don't really have a top-notch quarterback. So that's going to be one thing that they're still going to be looking for there. But I kind of agree with that 12 wins. I'm looking down through here. I could see I could see the 12-4. So I'm going to agree with that. There are teams like, I see probably the Patriots game probably being the toughest game of the year. And the second toughest game, you have to go to Houston on Christmas and play that game for a 4:30 game. So 2 tough games, and that's back-to-back at the end of the season.
The other shocking thing that I see on here, they have the Patriots going undefeated, which, I mean, the Steelers, everything else looks okay to me. But for a team to go undefeated, I just don't see that happening. I don't even think they're going to try to do it. Like, you actually have to try to go undefeated. And after they failed at it last time, I just don't think Belichick's going to do that. What were you going to say, Matt?
I think you may try. I mean, you want to win every game, but sometimes due to injury, due to situations, it's out of your control. I think that's a really bold prediction to try to say that they did enough. Now, granted, they did have a really good offseason. They went out and made some moves that typically they don't, picking up some defensive players and putting themselves in a position. When they hit the playoffs, I just think, if the Raiders are healthy with adding Marshawn Lynch, with the possibility of having to play Pittsburgh, it could really be a difficult playoff run for the teams in the AFC because of the talent that they have across the board.
Rick, do you have any thoughts on the Patriots getting undefeated?
And I agree with Matt as well. Imagine the Raiders last year if they would have had a healthy Derek Carr. They would have made more of a run. I mean, they were on their third-string quarterback trying to make a run in the playoffs. I mean, that's tough for a guy who's never played before. So, I mean, it's tough to think, what would have happened if, your what-if scenarios and everything. I don't see the Patriots. I see the Patriots definitely winning that division. I agree with USA Today there. The 16-0, I don't agree. Probably a 14-2, 15-1 team, something 13-3 even. So something along those lines, definitely. But the winner, they're definitely going to be the winner in that division. I think that's a hands-down an easy pick if there ever is one in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. The Patriots, as long as Tom Brady's there, they should be the leader in the East every year. But, 14 wins probably is even high. Like Rick said, it'd probably be around 13. I'd see. Coming into Pittsburgh, they have some tough road games. Not saying the Steelers are going to win that game, but it's tough for the Patriots. It's unlike other years where they have a year where, like last year, they got most of their tough games at home, and then even then, was that the Brady suspension year? Was that last year?
Yes.
So even with that, you're still going to drop a couple games, and I think Brady, I mean, yeah, making some key additions. I think they have a good chance to repeat in the Super Bowl. One team, so their actual Super Bowl prediction, it's not on here, is the Patriots and the Packers, I think. And I'm not buying the Packers hype. I don't think they get to the Super Bowl. I don't think Aaron Rodgers plays well as everyone says he does in the playoffs. I mean, he's solid, but he doesn't have that winning edge to put them over the top. I mean, when you're dropping a shootout, it seems like every year in the playoffs, maybe just try to hold on to the ball, do something, change something to make your team win. When, I don't know the records off to bring him in, but it'd be interesting to see a mix of like what the playoff records are of quarterbacks in the NFC. When he's played a little bit, he's had a little bit shorter of a career than Eli Manning, and he has less Super Bowls than him. For all the hype he gets, you would think he would at least have 2 or more Super Bowls. And it seems like they pick him every year. And yeah, the NFC North is another one, kind of a weaker division. But, I mean, it's going to be hard not to see the Falcons at least giving a run, and the Cowboys. Look what they were building on last year. If that keeps going, it's going to be crazy. But that's our next topic. So, Lucky Whitehead, is that how you say his name? Lucky? Lucky Whitehead was accused of robbing a store in Virginia. He said he was in Dallas at the time, and he had the plane ticket to verify that story. Well, the Cowboys cut him, and when they cut him, their official statement said something like, hey, he's had a troubling series of events or past history or something, which mainly points at this one arrest. Well, it turns out that the police arrested another man, got his identity, who somehow they said that he gave them Lucky Whitehead's social security number or his driver's license or something, and his address. He just rattled it off. And so they let him go. They're like, okay, we'll put it down as Lucky Whitehead. And they let this guy walk. So now the cops are like, hey, we need help finding the actual guy who did it. Because for some reason, this guy, he just assumed that, hey, as long as I mean, it's not that hard to get the address of an NFL player. I mean, most of the home purchases, I think, are public record these days. So if you really wanted to, like, go out and pretend to be a guy, I mean, maybe this dude already had a fake ID and he was pretending to be him at clubs. Remember, Ben Roethlisberger had that trouble. Was that like 5 years ago or something? Some guy was going around trying to pick up girls pretending to be Ben Roethlisberger. So it's crazy, though, that the cops wouldn't even check him. They're just like, oh, this guy knows all this stuff. He must be an NFL player, which I assume the guy has to be kind of cut. Or they just had no idea who Lucky Whitehead is. He's a receiver for the Cowboys, so. But go ahead, Rick. You can kick this off. Did you hear about this, and what do you think?
I did hear about this, and I find it to be hilarious. I mean, like you said, the information that you know on these players is out there. They put it out there sometimes, and sometimes you have to go searching for it as well. But, I mean, you could go find where these where these NFL players went to high school, who their friends are, who their Twitter followers are, and how much. There's so much free information out there. It's real easy. I understand now, especially with the Cowboys, they take a lot of criticism for past guys who have come in, had, trouble with the law, current players who had trouble with the law. A good example is Ezekiel Elliott's currently under investigation. He stays on the roster. They kick Lucky Whitehead off the roster, so it proves a superstar compared to I don't want to, maybe just a little bit down from the superstar level, Lucky Whitehead. But I find it to be hilarious. They're going to just cut him all of a sudden. Now he's proven innocent because he had to prove how he's innocent. And I'm waiting to see what all happens here if they go ahead and sign him back or anything. I wanted to check that. I then wasn't able to see if they re-signed him.
They didn't re-sign him.
He's still a free agent. Nobody's okay.
I think they used it as a way. They had to drop guys to get under the roster limit or whatever. So they cut him. Probably they said that they were going to cut him anyway. But I mean, I'm sure he's going to file back with the Players Association. They can't say in the statement that he's made a series of bad decisions or whatever. They worded it something like that. I know that's not word for word, but you can't like vaguely hint that it's because he got arrested that you're going to cut him, and then it finds out that he wasn't even lying. I mean, like, his agent told them, like, no, he's been down here ready for training camp, because I'm sure the Cowboys training camp starts the same exact day as the Steelers. So, I don't know, like, they're not going to add him back. I'm sure, I mean, is it going to hurt him signing with other teams now? He's a marginal receiver. I mean, just in the NFL, I hate to dog guys on their abilities or whatever, but, I mean, that's just a fact. So this is his job. Now he kind of got screwed out of his job. He didn't even have a chance to win it back on the field. So it's ugly look for the Cowboys, because like you said, Ezekiel Elliott did something way worse, because it looked like the documentation had him going for like a couple days, allegedly, we'll say that, from multiple victims, that he's in domestic abuse cases. Which I guess the Lucky Whitehead accusation was that he went into Wawa. Wawa took a bunch of stuff and then just walked out. The police nabbed him right away. He just rattled off Lucky Whitehead's information and they let him go. So, go ahead, Matt. What are your thoughts?
Well, it wouldn't be a typical Dallas offseason if at least one or two players weren't arrested or suspended for petty crimes. So I think this is pretty much par for the course for Dallas. I definitely think that they use this Woodhead thing as a way to make an example for Ezekiel Elliott, to know how easy it is for them to cut a player and have it be out the door. And it's unfortunate for him that they let him go and that he became just one of their cuts that was going to get them to the number that they needed before camp. But I think the bigger picture to it was for Ezekiel Elliott to kind of wake up, because thinking that he's a superstar and that he's above, the law system, it only is going to set him up for potential trouble down the line if he doesn't get the picture that all this can be taken from you if you don't get your act together. So hopefully he's learned from it. Hopefully, Lucky has a chance to get lucky and sign with another team and maybe prove on the field that his actions are a lot better than getting run out because of identity theft.
Yeah, and I hope Ezekiel learned too, because, if you get cut from the Cowboys, there's only one place to go, and that's the Bengals. So we definitely don't want to see him there. Because the Steelers had a tough time playing him last year. I definitely don't want to see that again.
Definitely.
Any final thoughts on the NFL? Basically, we're going to do our predictions. I'm going to be tweeting out the actual schedule so that everyone can see, adding it to social media. But we're going to break down 2 divisions a week for the next 4 weeks, and then we'll give our final picks. I think it's like 2 weeks before the season. So we're going to start with the AFC East and the NFC East. So we're going to do one from each conference and go around the country. And we're going to pick total wins. So we're just going to give the average. I highly doubt that everyone at USA Today picked an undefeated season for the Patriots. So they definitely didn't do an average. But we're going to do an average wins, and we'll cover that all next week. So they might not add up total wins or whatever when you look at our entire picture. But everyone that we have on staff, even people you don't see on the cameras, we'll get a good group of picks, and then go from there and have an average out. And we're also going to be talking about fantasy football starting that same week. Starting next week, we're going to go through and do quarterbacks. We're going to do it by position group. So we're going to do quarterbacks next week. I think the following week, running backs, then wide receivers and tight ends, and then finish it up with defense and special teams. So keep an eye out for that. I've been going through, we play in a keeper league. I've been trying to weigh my roster if I should keep David Johnson, which I'm definitely going to do. He's going to cost me $72 out of my $200 budget, so the draft will be pretty easy for me. But I saw him jump out of that pool of water, which I was actually going to show on the show because it was on his Instagram, which, we shouldn't get pinged for that for copyright. But it looked like Fox Sports was putting their logo on all his videos. So I don't know if they actually bought the video of him jumping out of the pool that he originally posted on his Instagram last week. But I figured I'm not going to play with that. We don't need any copyright police coming after us. But if you want to check it out, David Johnson, he had an MCL sprain, I think, last year. So he missed the last couple games. It was after the Super Bowl for us, so he had already won me the championship, so I was fine with him taking a rest. And he healed up, jumped right out of a pool. Something that I might be able to do on my best day if it's like a 1 foot pool, like a kiddie pool. I could jump right out if I had to chase something down. But it's good to see him do that. Good to see him back in action. So, any final thoughts, guys? Go ahead, Matt. Start with you.
Just excited to finally get back into some football stuff. I feel like that period after the Super Bowl and after the Stanley Cup Finals, there's not really a whole lot of sports on. It's good to finally get into training camp, start to see some of those position battles. I'm curious to see how the wide receiver situation shakes out in Pittsburgh. Maybe Martavius learned his lesson and he's going to come back with a fury. Be nice to have him at full strength and see what the Steelers are going to do this year.
Rick?
And I just want to wish best of luck to my high school friend, Andrew Hawkins, who retired from the NFL today. He's pursuing now a doctorate degree in economics. He is going to be one of the people that is going to donate his brain for science with the numerous concussions he's had. So it's sad to see him go, but he's a great guy, and let's hope he gets that doctorate degree in economics. So, and the one sad thing I do want to say while reading story about Andrew Hawkins is 99% of the NFL players who have donated their brains for science all have some type of medical disorders, medical problems, had some types of concussion-related problems. It's 111 out of 112 of all reported problems, and this is sad and troubling for the NFL that this number just came out today. So
yeah, I saw that as well.
Yeah, so sad, but I wish Andy the best of luck.
Hey, Rick, did that have the years that the players actually played on it?
I did not see the years or anything like that. It just said the total numbers and everything came out, and then the percentage. So that was all I see. I didn't see the years. Was it players from the 70s, 80s, 90s, or 2000s to now? So I didn't see the years. I don't know if they did the years or not. So
that's what I was wondering, because I think we talked about this on the show earlier. A few months ago, I thought that they said that they had started to study players, and back when they wore the leather helmets, which is like the most recent, or like the farthest back they could go that actually had living players that had started to pass away, and there was only a handful of them. But none of the players that wore leather helmets had any trace of CTE. So I was curious to see what the new study had, if it was something, because Jeff wrote a good piece on it last year. It's something we always check in on, just for the concussion. So it'd be interesting to see if it is something to do with the helmets, because I'm sure the ones that are getting tested now all wore those huge, heavy helmets that they made you wear in Pee-wees because the high school kids grew out of them. And you put it on, you hit one hit, and then you're seeing blurry for the rest of the day. So I don't know if the helmets have something to do with it. I have a feeling that they do, just playing football myself in different styled helmets. So it's something I'll look deeper into it, and I'll send out the study too, so people who are curious can take a look. All right, going to go ahead and touch on, just real quick, the USA soccer team is in the, I don't know how to say it, CONCACAF Gold Cup final, which is basically like the North American World Cup. It's only the countries that are on in the Americas. I don't know if South America plays. I don't think they do, actually. I think it's Central and North America, and I don't even know if it has something to do with qualifying for the World Cup. But the U.S., we were slated to play Mexico, but Mexico just got upset 2 days ago by Jamaica, which is good news for us, because in the all-time series, Mexico has 7 CONCACAF Gold Cup championships, and we have 5. So as long as we come out, play our best game, take it to Jamaica, we can win that 6th championship, and then hopefully the next time around we can tie Mexico before finally taking the lead. So if you're into soccer, trying to get into it, I know I get really big into World Cup, but it'd be good to see the United States win another Gold Cup this year, after I think they had a coaching change. It kind of made me feel a little bit more at ease, because they were really close to not qualifying for the World Cup next year. So hopefully things get rolling, they win a Gold Cup, Then the other qualifiers are in September or October, I believe. So we'll be coming back around that. But real quick, do you guys have any thoughts on the U.S. soccer team? You can kick it off, Rick.
Just saying that it's better not to play Mexico, because Mexico's always been a tough team through the years and always had a good system and everything in place. So it's nice to see them playing Jamaica in a way, just because they don't have the long history or, the success that, United States or Mexico have had. So it's good to play a team that's a weaker opponent. So it's also good to see them. So possibly have a chance to win it here as well. So good luck, Team USA.
Matt?
Being that I'm American, I follow American football. I really don't give a crap about soccer. So because America's in it, good luck, USA. I hope you guys win, but I'm really not watching. I would care more about the NFL training camp. I feel like there's too many soccer leagues. It's like with the soccer leagues and soccer games, it's just like every time you turn around, there's some other tournament. So I can't keep track of all that. I'll stick to football. Go USA.
All right, well, that's what I figured, but I figured since we're in the United States, we might as well bring it up. Hopefully one time before we die, we'll win a World Cup. That would be awesome. All right, my next topic is the Big Ten Media Days. Now, before I get any comments, I know we missed the ACC Media Days, but I'm a Michigan guy, so I didn't know that happened last week. I thought that they all were this week during the Big Ten Media Days. But our resident guy, Matty B, he plugs Florida State every show, but he doesn't tell me that the ACC had their Media Days, so we missed it. I know that people in Pittsburgh, we cover mostly Pittsburgh stuff. If you were on to try to hear some insight on Pitt, Jeffrey, he's our Pitt guy, hasn't been on, and I just didn't know that it happened. So I'll do a better job next time. They did have, for the ACC Media Days, they picked Florida State and Miami, I think, in the championship. Most of them picked coming from that conference. A couple people did have Pitt in first place. I think they had him in first place. I don't know how many votes it was, but it was close behind Miami. But there was like 3 or 4 teams split in that division. And Pitt, who knows? Maybe they got the right coach, because since he left Michigan State has kind of been a dumpster fire. And, hey, they beat Penn State and Clemson last year. So that's something to build on. Maybe Pitt can keep it going. But for the ACC, I'd predict that Florida State's going to win. I don't think Clemson's going to be able to make a repeat. If you want to give your thoughts, Matt, real quick.
I totally agree with that. I think there's so many quarterbacks that left from the ACC that it's going to resemble a traditional SEC type year where you're going to have low scoring. It's going to be defensive battles. The ACC is boasting some of the top defensive line potential draft picks. So I think you're going to see a lot scoring game. That you're going to probably see some sloppier games because you're going to be seeing a lot of teams breaking in new quarterbacks. So I think that it's fair to say from the Atlantic side, Florida State's going to come out on top. I think they've added through the signing period. They picked up a lot of top recruits. They had the number 1 D tackle, the number 1 D end, the number 1 running back. That are all slated to potentially be big contributors this year. I think they just pick up right where they left off last year. And as long as DeAndre Francois continues growing in Jimbo Fisher's system, I think they should run the table this year.
All right, Rick, you have any thoughts on the ACC?
Yeah. And I know Matt was more talking about the additions. I'll talk more about the subtractions, and that's where I think about with Clemson. A lot of their key people that helped them win are now gone and now in the NFL. So I think that's going to be one thing that helps out teams like Florida State in the conference, because Clemson's going down because they lost so many key players at key spots. So I think if I had to give my prediction now, I think I would also agree with the Florida State pick. So mostly because of Clemson losing too many key players. It's tough rebuilding constantly every year. So and Clemson's in a rebuilding, I would say, to a certain extent. So Florida State.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to come from that division. And the quarterback, was he Francois? Is he back this year?
Yep.
That's
Yep.
why. He had a good bowl game. He's going to be much more mature this year. And like Matt said, if you're losing a lot of quarterbacks in the league, you just need a veteran guy to go out there. But we're going to go ahead and turn into the Big Ten Media Days is happening. They kicked it off. I think they had like a Big Ten 10K run. I saw a bunch of like random stuff floating around on the internet. And I don't think the predictions weren't in by the time I gathered materials for this show. So I don't know too much on the predictions, but I wanted to touch base on this. Rick is a Penn State guy, and like I said, being a Pittsburgh show, we're always hard on Penn State, but it'd be good to hear the perspective from a Penn State guy, what he thinks Penn State's going to do this year. So go ahead, Rick. How good do you think Penn State's going to be, and do you think they'll repeat?
I think there's a good chance it's a repeat. I will say this. The number 2 running back in the country is Barkley, slated to be a first-round pick if he goes out this year, which will probably more than likely happen. I mean, the one thing that Penn State had a great ability of last year was the come-from-behind win. It seemed like they were always down, and they came back all the time. So I think what hurt them in a way, was the Pitt loss. Pitt loss hurt them because they were fighting from behind from the beginning of the season, losing in a non-conference game right off the start. So I think what happened to them when they faced Michigan, it was a faster team than them, and they couldn't compete with the speed. So a lot of key people are returning for Penn State, so that's a great thing for them to have. I would say this, finally Franklin figured it out. So instead he was on the hot seat last year, now he's pretty much got a job for years and years to come now because of what he accomplished and everything. So Franklin has people buying in, and he also is going to have some nice recruits here. And let's see if they can get into the top 10 and the overall for the class that's coming in next season, not this season, but the next season. So I will say this, I think there is a chance for the repeat. So I'll give them the shot. So hopefully, but it depends a lot more, I think, on the non-conference schedule. They got to win and win big.
Just real quick, though, before I go on to Matt, who do you think the number 1 running back is, if it's not Barkley?
Hill from LSU.
Ooh.
I would pick him. A lot of the national media and everything's picking him. I'll go with him for right now. We'll wait and see what Barkley does. But the thing was, he did not excel in the big game during the regular season. He didn't do well in Ohio State, and he didn't do well at Michigan. So I think that hurt him overall. So he did great against some of the other teams, but stunk against those two. So the key may be him in the big game.
I think some of that stuff, from an outsider perspective, is coaching. I know you said about them starting slow. I think that's just them not being prepared. I don't think it was them being calmed down. I know they had some injuries for the Michigan game, but Michigan came out like a torpedo, and there was nothing Penn State could do. Even whenever they calmed down, like some of those other games, they were able to calm down and make a comeback against the Minnesotas. But I saw it was very similar to Michigan during the Brady Hoke era, where you're letting teams that are way less talented than you hang around. And then they have the lead, like Minnesota did, and then you're forced to come back. And to me, that's all coaching. Matt, you're a football coach. What do you think about that and Penn State's chances this year?
I love that they keep Franklin around. I think he will keep continuing to let Penn State win enough to maintain his job security, but I don't think he's going to do enough to keep them as a top contender. I think last year you saw the knockdown drag out of Michigan and Ohio State pushing each other around, and to me I almost felt like Penn State backed their way into the conference championship. And their championship, it wasn't representative of the top teams of the conference, but they made their way in. They won the division, won the conference, so you can't take that away, but I just don't know if they have it in them to consistently win and win on the level that they have to gain that national championship caliber program. For as many top tier recruits and for as many things as Penn State media puts out about their top recruits, they're not doing a lot with them when they get there. They'll crack the top 25 and then they lose to Purdue or they lose to someone that they shouldn't, and it completely wipes them out. So I think until they start winning the games that they're supposed to win, and not just win them, but win them decisively, I think they're not going to be considered on that higher level and maybe swing some of the people who are voting for the positions in the playoff.
Yeah, and I think with that, when you're saying about the recruits and stuff, some of the stuff, it's just, they were just more talented. Like, I think of the Big Ten championship game. Penn State coaches kind of just looked like they just threw their hands up and were like, just throw the ball deep. Like, our receivers are more talented. It's the only thing we have going for us right now. And Wisconsin,
that's exactly it.
They never adjusted. Wisconsin did. So I can't say that Penn State coaches can't make adjustments. But at some point, it was like, if your guys have been more talented like this whole game, why weren't you able to just run away with it instead of waiting until you're down so many touchdowns before making some adjustments and kind of doing? They did the same exact thing against USC. Both teams, it just turned into like a big shootout because they were like, Penn State's like, our best chance is just to go deep. They had some talented receivers. I don't know if they're back or not. But that's something that if they're going to repeat, I just don't think they're going to get by Ohio State. I hate to say it. It's probably going to be Ohio State's conference this year. They had the youngest team, I think, last year in the country. Ohio State did. Excuse me. And they made it all the way to the college football playoffs. The only thing they have to worry about is if they're going to have a
their
hangover.
Offense with them.
Huh?
Packing their offense with them. Go all that way to the playoffs and not score a point.
That's what I was going to say. Is that going to linger? Because you have Oklahoma early, I think, again. This one might be at the shoe, though. So they might be able to eke one out there. But, yeah, is that going to be traumatizing? You have a young team. I mean, it hit Urban Meyer before when he was at Florida. They got shell-shocked, and then everything fell apart, and he was having a heart attack. So it'll be an interesting year, because it's pretty much down between them and Penn State from what I've seen in Vegas. Michigan, we now have the youngest team. So even though the schedule's favorable, we get a lot of teams at home, Ohio State. We have a neutral game against Florida to kick off the year. That will be telling. And then we have to travel to Penn State. It's probably our hardest game on the road. I mean, I just think that Penn State's better than Florida. Maybe it's that Florida's never beat Michigan that I kind of am not afraid of them. But I feel like that first game, Phil Steele, that college football writer, he always throws out nonsense and said he's the most accurate weatherman of all time or whatever he is to college sports. He's saying that Florida's his number one team and they're going to be a sleeper and win the SEC or whatever he was rambling about. But, I mean, just the way... When was that? 2 years ago, Michigan played them in the Citrus Bowl, and Coach Harbaugh made their coach look like a high school coach. He just ran the score up, did whatever he wanted. That game was over within 10 minutes. It was kind of like watching Rutgers last year, except Harbaugh didn't want to run the score up on Florida like he did on Rutgers, because we could have. And I don't know, maybe I'm just optimistic. The only thing that I saw that was good news kind of coming out of the Big Ten Media Days is Harbaugh said it's a three-way quarterback battle. It's not. There's no way O'Korn is in the quarterback battle. I'm sorry, I know he transferred. He's a Pennsylvania kid from Huntington. He transferred from Houston. In the games he played last year, he was garbage. He had the chance. Wilton Spate definitely broke his rib in that Iowa game. And if O'Korn was ready, he could have easily came in and played in Ohio State, led them to the Big Ten championship, but he looked so bad against Indiana of all teams. If you can't move the ball in Indiana, you're not in the quarterback battle the next year. So I think it's down to 2. It'll be interesting because Spate started all the games last year, but Peters is the higher recruit. And last time Harbaugh was in a position like this, he went with a younger guy, which turned out to be Andrew Luck, also a 4-star recruit. People always overhype Andrew Luck, saying that he was like the greatest high school recruit ever. He wasn't. He was a 4-star recruit. Harbaugh coached him up. So it'll be interesting to see if Harbaugh goes with the younger guy, thinking that he can coach him up on a young team. I don't know, but it's got me pretty excited. I know that Florida game. Florida, man. I can't stand that.
Garbage.
Yeah.
Their coach is too busy shark hunting.
Yeah, and speaking of coaches in the SEC, we're going to move on from the Big Ten now that I gave my little rant. Our last topic of the day, Ole Miss. Hugh Freeze, he resigned from Ole Miss last week after allegedly, because I put this on here because it's a crazy story. I'll get into it. He called an escort service from his school phone, which I'm assuming was his cell phone. Now, I read the report. This was discovered by a Mississippi State fan. So apparently this Mississippi State fan, he said he was writing a book on the coaches and like what they did in their free time or something. I don't know. It was very vague. And the guy looked like, I don't want to judge a book by its cover, but he didn't look like he would be writing a book. So he said that he was combing through phone records and he noticed that Hugh Freeze had redacted a couple. I guess you can get them redacted from the public record if you say they were personal calls. So the big red flag for me is if he was calling an escort service, why wouldn't he just redact that? I mean, you can get it deleted from the database, it looked like. He had other ones where it was just a blank entry. So someone, and I work in computers, so like basically all it is kind of like an Excel spreadsheet is what a database is. It's just on a different computer. And if someone goes in and redacts it, it's wiped clean. You can't see it. And it's kind of like what UNC did for their NCAA allegations. NCAA sent out their report. UNC redacts a bunch of words, which the only term that fits if you read that report where it's redacted, the redacted word is basketball. So if you go back and look at that report, UNC can redact whatever terms it said, but it was like the blank team. It was like basketball. Like they redacted basketball. So like if they could redact that, why wouldn't Hugh Freeze just be like, oh, I bought my kid a burner. And then he just pretended like he bought a burner and redacted that as a personal call. I don't know. But I'll get you guys go ahead and give me your thoughts first. Go ahead, Rick.
I just find it funny that he claimed he misdialed. So he's reporting to different sites that he misdialed. So that's what he's claiming. So good old Hugh. If that's what you're claiming, come on. There's other ways to do things, and if you're stupid enough to do it, you're stupid enough to get caught, and you're just stupid. He probably had a nice contract. I'm not sure, I couldn't find his contract that he signed, how much money it was for. But come on. This is 2017. Everybody's looking over everybody's shoulder, see what you're doing. How many colleges and how many things have been caught that you've been doing something stupid, like having made up classes or not even showing up, or you're signing somebody else to do everything for you. I mean, everything that you do at the college level, especially in the sports of basketball and football, the big money sports, is going to be looked over, combed over, and looked over 5 different ways from 5 different, people you don't even know. So, I mean, and especially when you're with a cell phone that can be hacked and everything, how many celebrity hacks have happened? Numerous. So, I mean, this guy, whatever. And the AD came out and also said if he didn't resign, he was going to be fired anyway. So this guy was gone anyway. So I don't know what else to say, but he did it to himself. I mean, wasn't something somebody else caused or anything. This was all 100% on him.
Matt, go ahead. Do you have any thoughts on this?
They're still coming out with evidence and different reports of things that are going on with it. To me, there's so many things that just I don't understand and don't add up. One of the things that I was reading about that Coach Freeze was on a podcast discussing like his faith and how he worries about the kids in his program because he knows that their ability to be swayed by negative influences and different things like that. And it's ironic that you go on a podcast or you go to the media and you're talking about your faith, and then out of nowhere these claims come out and end up ruining his career. But also I find it interesting that it's a Mississippi State fan that outs him. So I mean, nothing like one of your rivals coming up with the dirt that then ends up getting the coach canned. It just seemed a little bit too convenient, if you ask me. And then maybe there's some more to this that we'll see as time goes on.
Well, I'm wondering, because I have some conspiracy stuff here. If I had some conspiracy music, I'd be playing it right now. Because Houston Nutt, I think that was the old coach.
Absolutely.
So Houston Nutt gets fired. I think he kind of ran out of town. The NCAA investigation comes into town. Now, the reason I brought up UNC a little bit ago is because they played this stall tactic before. If you fire your employee, I don't think the NCAA can then question them in the allegation. Now, I don't know which phone was used to call the escort service, but they said that it was a pattern of troubling calls, but when they actually released those to the public, it was only one call. One call does not make a pattern. Same with the Lucky Whitehead thing we talked about earlier. So to me, unless there were other calls, but why wouldn't you just release them all? So to me, it could be a plant. Is it a cell phone that he called that number on, or is it his office phone? Because janitors have access to the office. Anyone can go in and just hide out in his office. I mean, I'm sure college coaches work crazy hours. Who's to say he's not in his office watching film at 6 a.m? He stumbles out and walks down to like the Starbucks on campus, or he goes to the bathroom. Someone jumps in, dials this number. He's in there watching film at 2, 3 a.m. It looks like it's a late night escort call. A Mississippi State fan finds this. How do you know it wasn't a Mississippi State fan who was a janitor in that building? Like one thing, it just doesn't make sense to me. That's my conspiracy, that someone planted this to kind of get him out of there so that he couldn't talk to the NCAA. I mean, the NCAA should hammer them already because of the Laramie Tunsil thing during the draft, where they just, his stepdad or whatever was throwing out messages about them paying for his electric or whatever. And him, I mean, the smoking the bong thing was just, that was funny. That wasn't him, like, breaking any NCAA rules, but the paying for utility stuff, that's big. There's no way around it. So, I don't know. If I had a conspiracy, that's what I would say, is he was forced out. They made it seem like a fire. Maybe they slipped this guy the phone records hoping that he would notice. They said it was a 313 area code. I don't know what area code that is. Apparently it was out of state. But like, I'm assuming he's calling kids from all across the country. So it's not like the different area code is going to throw a red flag. It's not like he was calling like an 888 number. I don't even know what escort numbers are, if they're like toll free like that or not. But it's not like he was calling like a specialty number. Just, the area code seemed weird to me. So the guy said, so I looked it up and then started laughing. And then called someone and said, hey, type this number in your computer because you're going to find this funny or something. And then that's whenever it broke. But sorry, I'm dying over here. So hopefully that's not too loud on the show if I can't get out of the mic. But I don't know. Do you guys think Ole Miss is going to get hit by the NCAA sanctions?
No, I don't think they will. I think by them quickly removing the coach, and they hired someone already in the interim from the staff to kind of keep the program together, I'd be surprised if they really did that. It seems like for the schools that are either willing to put the self-sanctions in place or self-discipline in place, they seem to kind of just let things ride on their own. They may do something lighter, like a bowl ban or something later on, but I don't know if they're going to really come out drastically, especially given that they still haven't done anything with the UNC issues and still waiting to see what those results are going to be. I think they're going to just kind of play it low-key and try not to bring any more unnecessary publicity to themselves.
And I agree with Matt. I think it's going to be something very low key, something they're going to, maybe 1 year they're not going to a bowl or something like that. It's not going to be something huge. This wasn't, this was a minor thing, not a major thing. This wasn't involving players. It was only one coach. So I think it's going to be something minor, maybe a bowl bid they won't get next year or something like that.
A little bit off topic. I don't know if this is real. It could have been fake, but I did see a screenshot passed around A few years ago, Ole Miss was getting all kind of #1 recruiting classes, and it was a tweet from Jose Canseco that said, "Lay off Ole Miss, they're clean," or something like that, which is ironic because he basically wrote the book on steroids in Major League Baseball, basically the book on cheating, saying, I think it was like, NCAA quit looking at Ole Miss, they're clean, or their program's clean. So I don't know if that was him throwing shade at them, but there's no way Ole Miss, just talking to some people, their facilities are under par in the SEC. There's no way they should have been pulling in those top recruits. I mean, they weren't spending the money. It just didn't make sense at the time. I think one of them, was it a lineman? So one of them went to Ole Miss over Michigan, and it was kind of out of left field because I didn't actually think that Ole Miss was in it. So,
absolutely, it was that 1 year. I remember we were talking about it when we were down in North Carolina, saying that out of left field, Ole Miss pulled in Kim Diche and a couple of those other guys. It was like top players, and it's like, where's all this? Like, there was no momentum going into signing day. It was just like out of left field, they nailed like one of the top recruiting classes in the country. I was like, well, how the heck? What is pulling people to Ole Miss right now? Like, they weren't a winning program, or like, even being competitive in the SEC. But then they landed those prospects.
Yeah, and with that, they were able to beat Alabama. What's it, 2 of the last 3 years or something?
Absolutely,
they've been the thorn in their side, just because they've been pulling these crazy guys in that they shouldn't have had in the first place. And then they had that off-campus issue. I don't know if it was with guns or drugs, but I think Kim Diche was in that, where, I mean, there was shady stuff going on there. So I'm not surprised if anything else comes out of this. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me in the least that they had more dirt on Ole Miss. But that's it for everything we had for this week. Again, check back next week for... We're going to do our NFL division previews, and we're going to go through fantasy sports, basically getting you ready for your draft. And we'll be checking in on the Pirates, on their push for the playoffs, and the Steelers as they open up training camp. So that's it for me. We'll go around and do closing thoughts. Matt, you have anything before we go?
One of the things from the Big Ten media days that cracked me up a little bit, they had Kirk Ferentz read some of the mean tweets, and one of his said a Kirk Ferentz draft would be 4 punters and 3 offensive linemen. That was pretty good stuff.
And I'll just say that coming up here this week in Major Leagues, we do have the trade deadline, so let's see what big names go, and who improves and who doesn't get the big names. So I'm going to be interested to see that.
Yep, and I hope my intel's right and McCutcheon does not go anywhere, or any of the other big Pirate guys. But that's it. The last thing from the Big Ten, I tried to see what ESPN had for coverage as I was doing research. Their top story on the Big Ten media days, best dressed players. Nothing to do with Big Ten football. Nothing. Who cares what they're dressed like? But I'll end with that. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook. The Reddit's up. I've been adding stories. We're almost all caught up on there. So everything will be caught up on there. I'll be tweeting out stuff that we use on the show and getting that. So tell your friends we're on Periscope every Tuesday at 9. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.